So in this video, I'm going to go through the various types of tree traversals that we discussed briefly in class, but as a review, so we understand how the different methods for traversing a tree, or in other words, walking through a tree, enumerating all the leaves of the tree, all the nodes of the tree, right? Those are all different ways of saying the same thing. And when we're talking about that, we're talking about tree traversal. So when we talk about tree traversal, we're given a tree of some kind. So here, in this example, we're looking at a binary tree, and each of the nodes is labeled with an emoji. In this case, it happens to be binary. It could be non-binary. It's not necessarily a binary search tree either. It's just a tree. And then what we want to do is, let's say we want to print all of the nodes in the tree in some order. And there's two main ways to do this. One is what we refer to as depth first. In depth first search, we're trying to basically go all the way down one of the branches and complete it before we go down another branch. And the other is breath first, which you can sort of think of as, blowing into the top of the tree, which means you're printing it in layers. So as your breath would go through the tree. So within the depth first traversals, there's also three specific ways to enumerate the nodes within the tree. We call those in order, preorder, and postorder. And that really, all it changes is when you print the root of the subtree that you're talking about. Whether you print it first, which is preorder, in the middle of the two children, which is in order, or after both of the children, which is postorder, right? So in, pre, post really tells you whether you're printing this guy in the middle, before, or after, right? Okay, so let's run through a couple examples of these different tree traversal types. And I think by sort of exemplifying the tree traversal methods, that'll make it more concrete. So we're going to start with in-order traversal. This is probably the most common type of traversal that you're going to see. And in in-order traversal, we always print our left child tree first. So you print all of the stuff in your left child before you print yourself, and then you print all of the stuff in your right child. So in this case, the neutral face is the root of the tree. So he's going to call in-order traversal on his left child first, and he's going to wait for him to print everything before he prints his right child, before he prints himself and then his right child. So then that makes a recursive call to the happy face, right? And the happy face guy says, well, I need to print my left child before me. So the silly face gets printed or gets called, and he says, well, I need to print my left child first. So in order traversal, this guy is the one that's printed first, right? So he prints himself because he doesn't have a left child. So he would normally print his left child and then himself and then his right child. But in this case, he doesn't have any children, so he prints himself. Then it passes it back to the silly face guy, and he says, well, I've already printed my left child, so I'm going to print myself. And then I'm going to print my right child. So cowboy hat guy gets printed less, right? So if you look at just this subtree in isolation, you can really see how in-order traversal works, right? It prints the left child, then the root of the subtree, and then the right child. So now this subtree is completed. So the happy face can print itself, and then that node makes a recursive call on the right child only after it's printed itself. So then the laughing guy makes a call to his left child first, and then prints itself, and then prints its right child. And now this subtree is finished which means this whole subtree is finished, which means we can now print the root, right? And then start working on the right subtree. So the right subtree, again, makes a recursive call on the left, on its left subtree, then prints itself, and then prints its right subtree. So this is the in order traversal, right? If you identify the root of the whole tree, he should be in between the stuff on the left and the stuff on the right. Right. So then what's preorder traversal look like? Well, preorder, as the name implies, prints the root first, and then both of its children, again starting with the left. Right? So in this case, this neutral face gets printed first, right? Because he prints, it prints himself before it makes a call to either of its children. And then the call goes to the smiley face. And again, the root prints itself before going to either of its children. Then it makes a recursive call on the left, prints itself, and makes a call to its left. And now we've completed this entire line. So we go back up. This one's printed itself already, so it prints its right child. And then we proceed back up the stack, right? Calling the left child, or the right child. It prints itself, and then its left child, and then its right child. And now we're done with this subtree and the root, so all we have left is the right subtree, which, again, the root of the subtree prints itself first, and then its left child, then its right child. So this is what it looks like with preorder traversal. You can see the root was printed first, and then the left subtree, and then the right subtree, right? And then postorder is basically the opposite, where we print both of our children before we print ourselves. So here, the neutral face first makes a call on the left, and just like in order traversal, the upside down face gets printed first, right? But then, unlike in order, the goofy face waits until its right child is printed, and then it prints itself. So again, just like we saw in order, this subtree really sort of exemplifies the traversal method that we're working with. It prints both of its children before it prints the root of the subtree. So once this left subtree is printed, we go back up the stack, but he is going to print his right subtree before he prints himself. So we go down to the laughing face, but the laughing face is going to print both of its children before it prints itself. So that means we have the laugh cry face and then the smiling face before the laughing face gets printed. And again, you can see that traversal order there, very exemplified. Now both of its children have been printed, so the happy face can print itself. And we come back up to the root of the entire tree, and he's going to print his right child before he prints himself. So the right child begins with the leftmost child, and then the right child, and then the root of the subtree, and then the root of the tree itself. So just like we did before, if you break this down, we can see we have our left subtree, and then our right subtree, and then the root of the whole tree, right? So left, right, root. And that's for post order. So all three of these are depth first traversals, right? We always go to the end before we move on to the next child, right? We always print all of the left subtree before we print all of the right subtree. And it's where we print the root along that path. But then breath first traversals are a little bit different in that they print the tree from top to bottom, right? So in breath first traversal, just like in preorder traversal, we print the root first, right? So The root gets printed first, and then both of its children nodes get printed. So that's the smiley face and the sad face get printed. And notice none of their children are printed yet. So it's level 1 or level 0, level 1, and then everything in level 2 gets printed, right? Bop, 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 bop. And we usually print them from left to right, and then everything in level 3 gets printed. And it looks like I included too many here, right? And then everything in level 3. So depth first, again, goes down the branch all the way and prints an entire subtree at once. Breath first prints everything layer by layer.